Hello, everyone, and welcome to Results Washington Reflection Series. This is an interview series that highlights continuous improvement efforts within the enterprise happening across the state, as well as spotlighting the individual subject matter experts of those efforts as they share their perspectives and experience throughout the project. We will hear about their achievements, barriers faced, and lessons learned along the way. I'm Talia. I'm a senior performance advisor here at Results Washington. And today I'm super excited to introduce and to let you know that we are going to speak with Carei with the Washington State Department of Corrections. And she is here to share about a project she worked redesigning quality indicators to improve treatment outcomes and job satisfaction. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Ray.
Thank you for having me. Really excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited too. And for those that watch this, just know that Rain is also going to come to one of our monthly COPs and share some things about this project with actual visual slides. So we'll be able to have some visuals to the story as well. But today we're just going to have a nice casual conversation and hear a little bit about the project. So let's kick this off by telling our listeners a little bit about you, what you do, and what your agency is responsible for.
I'd be happy to. My name is Carei. I'm a psychologist at Washington Correction Center for Women, and this is my 15th year working with women and providing healthcare. I'm really passionate about helping women heal and recover, and specifically increasing marginalized women's access to healthcare, which directly impacts public safety. And we are responsible for all the daily mental health care for all the incarcerated women in the state. And that ranges from everything from just sort of like brief check-ins all the way up to intensive daily, almost like hospital level.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mhm.
So, what is this greatness that you've done with this project? Let's hear about this project. And did I get the title right?
You did. So it is kind of a mouthful, the redesigning quality indicators to improve treatment outcomes and job satisfaction. But what we were really trying to kind of solve there was kind of two-pronged. So one, there were no quality indicators for women's healthcare in DOC. There was only process indicators, and we were trying to figure out the other part was to how we could take existing resources that we already have, and frankly, pretty minimum resources available, and then maximize those to provide high quality healthcare and reach as many incarcerated women as possible without sacrificing quality or safety.
Nice. So, to clarify, when you say improving treatment outcomes and job satisfaction, we're improving the treatment outcomes for the folks that are incarcerated, want to give them the best outcomes, and then job satisfaction for the folks that are working there. Can you go a little bit into that?
Absolutely. The second part, the job.
Yeah, just kind of just to give us an idea of, I guess, why was this issue, well, actually for both, for the treatment outcomes and for the job satisfaction, why was this something that was important to address?
That's a great question. So I think for the first part, so starting with the incarcerated women, so treatment outcomes are pretty critical because these women, even though they're incarcerated, and I think sometimes people think they're sort of like out of sight, out of mind. These are like our sisters, mothers, daughters, cousins, neighbors, people you're going to see when you're out in the community. And so their recovery directly impacts us.
Mhm.
And then also, if you have effective work, that creates a really healthy environment for staff and for clients, which means that the work in itself is going to be better. And there's only so many hours in a day, so many dollars. And there's a critical opportunity there if you're working really well, really effectively to disrupt that incarceration cycle through addressing recidivistic factors of trauma and substance use. So that directly makes a safer community. In terms of for people in the working in the incarcerated environment, this is a really intense, difficult environment to work in. And so if you're maximizing success and clients are being are feeling satisfied and are healing, your providers are feeling better about their work, which means that they're going to stay longer, that they're going to do a better job. So this just overall makes a healthier work environment. And that's critical when you're working somewhere that's just so intense and so difficult because it can be really hard for people to stay or to feel valued. So you have to kind of pay attention to both sides, like the clients that you're helping and the staff that you're serving.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for that.
Mhm. Yeah.
So how did you go about when you realized, okay, this is an issue that, we need to address? How did you go about really figuring out how you wanted to solve that problem? Um, yeah, I'll start with that.
Yeah, that is a great question. It isn't really, I mean, I think it's a problem that like not any one person can solve, and it isn't a problem that has like a, magical solution that everything's just going to be resolved.
Mhm.
It's really day in, day out dedication to excellence and commitment to providing care. And so I think part of it is solvable, which I think in the presentation later too, we can look at some of those specifics, but part of it is really just ongoing commitment to quality practice. And so there were a lot of little things, like we started by sort of mentoring and building a successful team because you have to have like a very firm ground to stand on. We started tracking data by hand because those were the tools that we had to get a sense of sort of where we were headed and what we needed to do. And we installed like a scheduling system, a waterfall scheduling system, and built a lot of partnerships kind of just with people that were there doing the work, kind of sharing that same vision.
Nice. And would you say there was like instant buy-in on all these ideas?
I wouldn't say there was instant buy-in. I think there was excitement about the idea of like relief and more success. And so I think starting small, like starting with just even one case, one moment was huge because each little success built on another success. And so I think as that kind of started rolling, that proverbial sort of like rock rolling down the hill, it started to gain speed. But I think at first, I mean, it was, everybody sort of pushing it.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. Sounds like you had some folks on board that were, seeing the issue with the same lens and really motivated and encouraged to get that ball rolling for that process improvement. That's exciting. Okay, so what specific improvements and waste reductions did you see throughout this
Oh,
process
man.
improvement?
Yeah, we've seen a lot of improvement. So I think one of the improvements is just better healthcare for incarcerated women. And I think a lot of people don't know that trauma is a treatable condition. It is. And so providing treatment means that people can heal. And what we know about women's pathway to incarceration is that trauma is a big piece of that. So if you're treating trauma, it means that a lot of those women have a higher opportunity. The research says about 50% of not coming back. So one of the improvements is helping women actually have a shot of like going out to the community and staying in the community and being a productive person in the community, which is huge for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Another improvement was just the reduction in burnout and secondary traumatic stress for our staff. So that's been huge. We've been actually tracking that during our sort of weekly or monthly meetings. And staff are feeling a lot more satisfied in their job. They're seeing positive outcomes. Their burnout has decreased tremendously, which is huge, which means that retention for staff can stay. And then also just sort of like, I think using the time well is another improvement. I guess reducing time waste, I guess, is one of the things I'm thinking of. So time is probably one of the most precious resources we have in an incarcerated environment. There's just huge structural challenges to working in a prison. And so we really focused on sort of squeezing every minute out of every day to ensure that every drop of time we had could really be used for what we wanted to use it for, which was treatment and helping women heal and recover. And so maximizing that through these tools like waterfall scheduling, quality indicators, um, sort of these meetings that we do with the quality team, with our staff, all of those things have like enabled us to take sort of maximum energy, effort, and passion from our providers and match that to sort of maximum readiness to change for our clients, and also then match that to our schedulers' maximum ability to kind of squeeze everything out of the schedule and move forward like with this really strong program. So it's been really, really satisfying.
Wow, wow, that's a lot of improvement. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Let's see. So I think you kind of touched on it, but if you want to dive into it a little bit more, how did this work create more equitable outcomes for Washingtonians?
Definitely bringing quality healthcare to incarcerated women is a main equitable outcome for sure. For all Washingtonians, though, I think everyone in our department is dedicated to public safety. That is like always on our mind. So, kind of like you said, like I've touched on it, but just women healing means that they're coming out to our community and making safer neighbors and family members,
Mhm.
which is huge. And I think we're always cognizant of the cost to incarcerate around the state. So we just know that this is a costly endeavor. And if there's a way for us to reduce harm, improve the likelihood that someone can be a productive member, like give back to the community, that's definitely our priority. So.
Oh gosh, I love this project. I love hearing you talk about it. You said
Thank
earlier,
you.
not in these words, but along the lines, often folks think of incarcerated individuals kind of out of sight, out of mind. But
Hmm.
I love that this focuses so much on what needs to be focused on, which is the rehabilitation piece. And
Hmm.
and I love that you say, there is healing with trauma. And if you get that healing, then that really does stick. So that those are good nuggets that I'm holding on to. And I just think this is such a, I don't know, I feel like it's a project of passion, really, a
Yeah.
humanitarian project.
Ah, I'm so glad. It feels like it's coming across well. That's good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Has a lot of
Um,
heart.
yes, for sure. You can feel it coming through.
Mhm.
What's the next step in your project or your agency's plan?
Our next step is just our kind of ongoing commitment to capturing what like true data. So true data on our women's data is very invisible in the research. It's kind of just missing. So continuing to get that data out there, use it to operationally direct our services, making sure that our treatment outcomes and our resources are always pointed in the right direction, which I feel like is sort of the most fiscally responsible and also compassionately responsible move I can make towards my community. It's just letting them know that every drop of that work that's going on is really dedicated to their safety. And hopefully that reassures people because I know that this can be a really difficult topic for people. So
Yeah,
just that commitment to that data and direction and resource use.
awesome. In retrospect, what was the biggest challenge you faced during this improvement effort? And after thinking about that, what would you have done differently?
Hmm. I think the biggest challenges really were just coming to a place of radical acceptance, to be honest. So, like, there's always that kind of thing, I think, when you talk to anybody in a hard situation, when they're just like, there's not enough resources, there's not enough time, like that, just that sort of hopeless feeling when you're in like a very difficult spot with your work. But really, even one case, taking a small step really does matter. Like we started with one case, we ended up with over 300, which is kind of unheard of in terms of like our treatment cases.
Mhm.
And you have to start somewhere. Like it's not going to be perfect. You're not going to have limited, or you're not going to have all these tools. You're going to still have all these limitations. And so there was a point back in, I think, 2015 where we really came together as a team. And I was like, we're not going to get more resources. We had been in emergency over capacity for over a decade. We have the lowest staffing we'd ever had, highest burnout. And it was just a turning point internally for us where we were like, okay, we're not going to get anything else. So our decision is an internal decision to accept our situation and to move forward anyways.
Mhm.
Moving forward anyways meant like what's around us? Like what can we use that we already have and how can we build with what we have, which actually started to facilitate like creativity and energy, like you said, passion, life, right? And so that helped us to start moving. And I think just overcoming that mindset of sort of like you need something to do something and realizing that like you have to stop kind of waiting for change to come to you and realize that change is a critical process of who we are inside. So use that and move forward. So I think that has been like huge and we've learned a lot of lessons from that.
Well, if you don't mind, I'm going to steal that. And I will probably be using that in some future workshops because I just wrote that down. Move forward anyways. I love that, right? Not letting the
Yeah.
things that are out of your control stump you and hinder you from your progress. That is great. Thank you for that. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. Curious, just out of curiosity. Do you think that, or did you notice that the COVID time, like really increased the burnout, the taxing on the staff, and even, possibly some of the quality issues with the treatment? Or was this like always kind of an ongoing issue just because the correction system can be one of those that maybe just don't have enough resources in general? Yeah, I'm just curious if all this kind of kicked off with COVID or if it's always kind of been a thing.
It's always been a thing. I think COVID made it worse for sure because it cut off a lot of our access to sort of the outside world,
Mhm.
like for everybody, not just for us. But it's always been a thing. I think in corrections, there's always limited resources, limited time. There's always a lot of barriers. There's always going to be something, which I'm sure applies to other environments too. But I think that like the stopping waiting for everything to change around us was really probably the pivotal moment because it was just like you just can't keep waiting, like, and small steps do matter. Like one case at a time. Sure. The first case, which was in 2014, where we really did this massive shift for quality care and all of this stuff, was one case, but now there's like 300 of these people that have gone through this really intensive, amazing treatment and healing. And, you just have to sometimes be in that moment and keep moving. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, the correction system isn't always often talked about, right? Like with state work, with government work, the masses and the people, they hear about health everywhere they look. They hear about the economy, um,
Hmm.
but not everybody is hearing about just the correction system and great stories like these and all the hard work you all put into your daily jobs. So I guess my last question for you would be, what would you want people to know? Like if you could just kind of shed a light on anything, and provide a perspective for folks on what it's like for the ladies that you treat and the staff that's in there every day doing this hard work, what is just one thing you'd want folks to take away, if you had? And I know that's a real on the spot question, but I just feel like this, DOC, excuse me, just does so much great work and you just don't hear enough about it. So I would like to, I don't know, give you a moment to just, if there's something you can share, a sentiment or just something you can share with folks, what's something you'd like them to walk away knowing about the ladies in your care and the folks that are doing the work.
Man,
And you
that's
can
such a
take a
great
moment.
question. I know. I was like, how do I even get to one thing?
I know it's hard. You can take a moment. There's no rush.
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is healing is possible, but I don't know how much that resonates with people in the community. But honestly, when I'm working with these women, I think all the time, this is somebody's daughter, this is somebody's sister, mother, grandmother. And I see families in the prison. I see sometimes we have incarcerated daughters, mothers, and grandmothers at the same time. So, like, these are my community members. Like, I've had times when my kids were younger that I'd be on the playground and I would run into folks that had released. I think in the community, sometimes there's like a belief that, like I said, these are folks that you don't really run into, but that's really not true. Only 1% of our population stays behind bars. So
You know what?
to
And
me,
actually, let
oh,
me jump in and like
yeah,
provide a little bit of example to that if I
yeah,
can.
yeah, yeah.
Because I remember a while back, when I went to Purdy, because I used to do prison ministry. And so
Ooh,
yeah, I
cool.
loved it. So this is like
Oh,
a
wow.
tied to my heart. This
Yeah.
topic. But I remember just being very impressed with a center they had for women who came in that were pregnant. And I don't know if they still have this program, but
Yeah.
at the
Yeah.
time, oh, that's awesome. So at the time, they had these women that were pregnant, and then they, I believe, got to keep their babies there with them
Mhm.
for what, 6 months, or so many months to where they can
Mhm.
have that bonding period. And then, and then they work on their rehabilitation and then the baby goes. But that's just to provide an example for folks that
Mhm.
don't really connect that these are people in our community and they are mothers and they are just, like us, like we have kids, we have desires to be
Yeah.
bonded to our kids. So I don't know how many folks out there know um that these facilities have programs like this, but are really intentional in providing that care. So I just wanted to throw that in. Sorry to interrupt you, but
Oh,
I
no.
felt like that might be a good example on yeah, that definitely people of our community.
Yeah. People in our community that if we heal can stay in our community, go home and stay home, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's important. And I think knowing that women's pathway to incarceration is different than other pathways. So it's usually trauma followed by substance use, followed by incarceration.
Mhm.
As difficult as that is, it's also really hopeful because if you provide trauma and substance use treatment, there's a chance of changing that pathway. So I think just helping people connect to that it is meaningful and that it is worth it.
Mhm.
And then also like that the people that are working inside, like you said, they care a lot.
Yeah.
The work is so difficult, and the custody staff that I work with are just phenomenal people that are like committed to this incredibly difficult job. working with these people who are not always in the best moments of their life, might not be very kind or able to really see themselves, and yet they still show up every day and work with compassion and professionalism. So it's a hard job. It's an important job. It's one I really respect. So I appreciate you asking the question.
Yeah, wonderful. Now, okay, I don't do this often, but again, this is a topic that is just so, I guess this will be the last question.
Okay.
So in your profession, I would imagine you're giving guidance and counsel often. So what is your counsel to staff that get compassion fatigue?
Oh, yeah, it's so intense. So much of that happens. I mean, I think honestly, my counsel is really just compassion, like just having compassion because I understand that this is a real thing.
Mm.
I think this project, not to like betray it and tie it up, but it feels like just sort of natural to go back to the project that like honestly, the way I feel like I can best be effective is to ensure that the work is maximally meaningful so that the burnout is less. Because I think the more we're spinning our wheels, just kind of like talking to people or responding in crisis or something, not that those things aren't meaningful, but they don't change the pathway necessarily and they don't provide like maximum sort of satisfaction in seeing someone heal. So the more we can reduce sort of those sorts of things and increase meaningful connection in mental health staff, but also for the custody staff, because what they have to offer is really important. And the more they're engaging with clients in this really humane, compassionate way, it's just better for everyone. So, I mean, I think, I don't know, that might sound too trite, but it really is sort of the answer of like, make the work meaningful, move forward, like deepen everything. There's like this, I think at the end of the presentation on the last slide is like a quote from our chief medical officer that talks about like sort of like empathy being like rejuvenating. And that's really what comes to mind is that you think that like the closer you get to something that's difficult, pain or whatever it is, you think it's going to be worse.
Mhm.
But it's not necessarily. And actually, the research shows like the more compassion with obviously good boundaries, but like an empathy that you feel for someone, the more meaningful and healing it is for that person, but also for you. So
Yeah.
like when you keep like a lot of distance and that object sort of like objectify people, it actually makes it worse for you. So like you can remember that these are people that we want to love and care for in our community, like everything is just easier.
I love that. As you're talking, I'm just seeing like visuals and connections with
Mm,
just relationship. The word that comes to mind as you're talking is
yeah.
relationship. It's
Yeah.
relationship with the people that you're serving, the relationship with the people you work with, relationship with the work itself, right? Like
Mm,
um hearing you say, making the work meaningful will reduce burnout. Oh gosh, I can't say how true that is. I don't mean to like take us off track here,
no,
but
please do share.
just
Yeah.
like an analogy, right? Like, when you've worked in crazy fast-paced work, like for example, when I started with the state was with the healthcare authority, and we're working on with calls and folks that are losing their medical possibly, and you can either take those calls and be super frustrated that you've got to deal with somebody angry every time they're calling, and just start to hate your job because you're hating
Yeah.
the fact that you've got to deal with someone angry all the time. Or you can empathize, have compassion, connect with the meaning and the value of the work as you're
Mm,
understanding where they're coming from and really trying to get that healthcare for them. And yeah, when you really connect and you have a better relationship and perspective of the work that you're doing and why it's so important, you totally approach it in a much more positive and meaningful and caring way, which does reduce burnout because you're not doing something that you don't want to do. You're feeling good
mhm,
about it. It's rewarding,
mhm.
versus, people who just work at a call center or work somewhere else and they just don't like what it is that they do because they're not finding the value in it. So yeah, that's really good. Thank you for breaking that down. Oh, you brought so much to light today. I love it.
Thank you. Your
Well,
reflections are wonderful. It was such a nice invitation.
oh yeah, thank you, thank you. And I also just want to say, the governor gave you all an amazing shout out
Wow.
during the Lean conference. So if you ever have those moments where, and I hope you don't, it doesn't sound like you do, but if you ever have those moments where you feel like, you might not be doing enough. Just know that it's seen. Your work is not going unnoticed. The governor sees it. I obviously caught wind of it, which is what made me reach out to you. And I just know from having been in different facilities numerous times that that work is really a work of passion. So I'll just say on behalf of Washingtonians, thank you so much for
Thank you.
everything that you do and that you do with love. I'll say you
Oh,
really do it with love and care. And so you are very much appreciated. And thank you for your time today for sharing your project with us.
thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's awesome. Bye, everyone.